Hey, everybody on YouTube. Welcome back to the show. And this is season 2 of Twin Peaks recording session. So enjoy. Alrighty, I am starting my recording on Audacity. Hitting record. I'm going to count us down. 3, 2, 1, clap. So 3, 2, 1. All right, did everybody clap?
I did. You're going to have a double clap for me.
That's cool. All righty. My levels are a little high, so I'm going to bring myself down just a little bit. All righty.
Mr. Fancy Pants.
Look at this guy with his levels.
All righty, so here we go. Welcome back. You're listening to the show. I'm Jay. I'm here with Aaron.
Heyo.
And Tony.
Hello.
And we are talking season 2 of Twin Peaks. And regular listeners to this show, as well as other Mandamus radio products, will know that we are no stranger to a beverage while recording an episode. And I decided today to enjoy a beverage from season 2 of Twin Peaks. I probably should have looked up which episode it is, but it's around like episode 19 or 20 when Annie is introduced. She bellies up to the bar. She tells the bartender, "I want a drink. I don't know really what I want, though." And the bartender says, "How about rum?" And she says, "Sure." And so he makes her a rum and tonic, which sounds like an abomination to me. And then he garnishes that with a maraschino cherry. So cheers to Twin Peaks season 2, gentlemen.
How is it?
Cheers to you, sir.
You know what? There's worse drinks I've had. I think Twin Peaks is a don't knock it till you try it show, and I might put a rum and tonic into the don't knock it till you try it category.
Do you think that's intentional? Do you think that's some weird drink that David Lynch likes? Like, and he wanted to throw it out there for the world to try?
Well, not to give away all my talking points already, but I've got a theory about the town of Twin Peaks and the people who live in it that this drink is part of. And that theory is that everyone in this town is just the worst at whatever job they have. I think Dale Cooper is one of the worst FBI agents I've ever seen. I think Dr. Jacoby is one of the worst psychiatrists I've ever seen. I think that bartender in that episode is one of the worst bartenders I've ever seen. But now that I've tried this drink, that kind of undermines my theory.
Well, I mean, Dale did figure it all out in the end.
You're right. Dale was successful in his investigation, but his methods, I think, are one of the things that makes the show so fun.
I definitely, to me, something that is a ongoing theme with anything that David Lynch touches are facades, like where there are like kind of the appearance, like what you see on the surface layer, and then the underworld, the underpinnings that make up the true world or the true nature of things. And even with Dale, I think that showing him as doing these ridiculous, Far East methods for solving the crimes, and throwing things and being like, "Oh, well, that's evidence that my theory is right." That kind of stuff, and then it working. That to me is it kind of gets even to the facade there, right? That like people are just kind of guessing, and sometimes they kind of stumble into the correct answer. But I don't want to really take the lead here, but I do have some questions because I feel like everybody's watched season 2. It's ridiculous. I mean, I think we can all agree with that, number one. But it almost feels like there's two big parts to it, right? We have the first story arc, which is kind of finishing up the murder of Laura Palmer and Bob and Leland and all that stuff. And then part 2, which is the Wyndham Earl arc, right? And you could have probably just taken the first 6 episodes and tacked it onto season 1 and made that the true season 1, and then season 2 be the whole Wyndham Earl story. That would make more sense to me. But Number one, damn it, where did my questions go? Here they are. Last time when we were here in Twin Peaks, you guys kind of thought that Bobby was one of your favorite characters. Watching now through season 2, what do you think of Bobby?
I'll let Tony
He
take
has
that
his
one first.
moments. I don't know how I feel about him. I mean, just when I start to, like him, they kind of turn him into a little a-hole, but then they make him likable again. I don't know. I guess I'm divided on if I like him or not. He's pretty entertaining to watch, though. I
Jay?
don't really have very deep opinions. I have a question, though, that brings us back to the top of the episode. Was that Jacques Renault as the bartender? Like, I didn't look it up, but it looked like my memory had him in my head. But I don't know if it was actually the same guy.
He was a bartender at the beginning of season 1.
Well, he's dead at the end of season 1, and this season 2, at the end of it, like the guy who makes the drink for Annie that Jay drank at the beginning of our pod, he looked just like Jacques Renault, not Jean Renault. But
Oh, I don't remember.
He did look similar, but as Aaron so greatly put it in session 1, that Jacques Renault was a greasy bastard, and this bartender was not quite so greasy.
Okay, yeah. Sorry for my shallow opinions on Bobby, but
No. I'm just curious because I feel like Bobby kind of takes some twists and turns in season 2.
I loved the combination of Bobby and Benjamin Horn, the storyline about Bobby kind of getting to be his sort of right-hand man valet kind of thing. I enjoyed that. I wish he would treat Shelley a little better, but that's just not in Bobby's nature, I don't think.
I thought he was better than Leo, but I think he got a little bit better towards the end. But there for a while, I was like, dang, he's just another freaking Leo.
He never hit.
Getting abusive.
He never got physically abusive with Shelley. Like I think he is a little chauvinistic, just do what I'm telling you to do, girl. But I don't know, Bobby, like the whole insurance fraud, I feel bad for Shelley in that situation, but she kind of got duped into that. That's a not so good aspect of Bobby. Him trying to blackmail Benjamin Horn, but actually getting turned into a slight valet job. That's an interesting story arc. But I just, you guys all kind of liked Bobby in season 1, his ridiculousness. In season 2, he kind of goes on this meandering journey. Because he doesn't really have much to do with the story after Laura's murder is done, right?
Right. He's a little bit peripheral. But you mentioned the insurance fraud storyline. And I might have been projecting a little bit of my own world onto this, but that part, I love that part.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think this is another example of the surrealistic aspects of this show just seeping into every part of it. Because right from the beginning, if memory serves, we're told that if Leo is disabled and being taken care of by Bobby and Shelley, that they'll be getting $5,000 a month. Mm-hmm. And in reality, there's nobody in 2022 getting $5,000 a month from as disability payments.
Like, man, this is like the 90s, right? This is crazy amount of money that when they said that, I was like, oh my gosh, I would love $5,000 a month.
Right. And I see this and I go, oh, geez, this is just absolutely ridiculous. But then a few episodes later, once it's worked out that once you factor in the costs of the care for Leo, that they're barely breaking even, if not worse off. So Bobby gets his comeuppance. And I also really enjoyed that as well.
Yeah, like it didn't work out, right?
Yeah, right. The scheme didn't work. And I didn't like the parts of that storyline where we watched Bobby and Shelley be cruel to Leo. It's hard to root for Leo, but you don't want to see an incapacitated person be abused by the people who are charged with his care.
It's a weird dynamic, right? Yeah. Like he tortured Shelley and did horrible things, and they're taking advantage of him. And
Mhm.
so I think it gets back to the kind of moral ambiguity that is Twin Peaks.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that that's also what makes the show interesting is like kind of seeing these almost like real world melodramas play out, right?
Mhm.
And at the same time, like watching them kind of fail or go crazy, like the whole Benjamin Horn, Civil War, the South needs to win for him to break free from his insanity. Like these little vignettes that season two has. For some reason in my memory, I thought that the season was really boring. Perhaps there's a bit of insanity here, but I thoroughly enjoyed season two the second time around. Like there was some trudge, I'm not gonna lie, but overall the silly storylines this time around felt nostalgic, I guess, for me, and fun. But what about you guys? What did you guys think of season two overall?
Well, in part one, you had used the word sitcom to describe what was to come in season two, and I think I'm gonna come in similarly to you that it was sitcom but it was a tremendous amount of fun, and even when it got silly with Nadine and Mike, even and especially when it got silly with Lucy, Dick, and Andy and little Nicky, I enjoyed it a lot. What about you, Tony?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I mean, I had maybe it's just the thing of having lower expectations since I kind of heard it was kind of since Lynch left and then the quality dipped or whatever. Maybe my expectations were lower, but I really liked it. I thought, I mean, I think it takes till episode 9 for when it wraps up with Leland's stuff, like where Leland's Bob. And I just felt like those first 9 or 10 episodes went by quickly, and I was like, where in the first season I was kind of like maybe I'm not too much into the surrealness. It was a little bit tougher to watch. I feel like the first half of this season was I was looking forward to watching the episode, and then yeah, I liked the little lighter hearted moments too. I actually thought Leo's story was going to end. Well, it ended pretty darkly at the end, but I thought it was going to be darker for Shelly and Bobby. Like I thought he was going to come back to life. They were going to have to defend themselves and kill him, but everyone in the town and the authorities know that he's brain dead, so that they were going to have to like deal with, like they would be under suspicion for murdering Leo just to get out of having to take care of him because there was no proof that uh,
A good
he was
point.
capable of something like that. I thought it was going to go kind of darker like that with Bobby and Shelly having to like them having to deal with that part of it. But they kind of got bailed out a little bit when he wandered off into the woods.
Well, I think
But yeah,
with the woods, like Leo's whole story into the woods with Wyndham Earl and the whole Wyndham Earl scenario, um,
I
is
will
is
say I
kind
didn't
of
really care for the Wyndham Earl stuff that much. Like the
it felt like
plot,
it was something
I
like being
liked the plot,
forced.
but yeah, I liked the
Yes.
backstory. Like he was his old partner and fell in love with his wife. Like the story, like the bones are really good, but I didn't like the flesh, I guess, of that story.
Yeah, I'm not. That wasn't my favorite part of it either. Also, just some of the performances felt a little over the top. Like whenever he started dressing up like people, and going to town.
Oh man, when he's log lady at the Miss Twin Peaks pageant and he's holding like a third of a log.
Yep.
It's a chopped wood. Yeah, it's a chopped wood.
I was like, I was laughing my ass off to begin with because it's the square jawed man holding a third of a log with the wig on. But yeah,
And I really
go ahead.
oh go ahead, Jay. I would say like my sense of time in this show, I can't keep track of it because everyone's like, we're in a hurry, we've got these important things and crimes are happening, but I'll meet you here at 4 o'clock for a midday row on the boat with the lake. Like I have time for that. But also it's like still the same day. Like the passage of time in the days, I was just like, are we out of time or do we just have endless amounts of time? Like the days never seem to pass, and no one ever seemed to be in a hurry, and everyone like teleported all around town basically.
I think that might be part of this show's attempt to disorient you everything about Twin Peaks is just a little bit off, just a little bit strange.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe similarly to what we saw near the end of Future Man, where they ended up in that place where it was always twilight, and how that made people go crazy. I think Twin Peaks has a little bit of that, where time is very squishy.
One of the things that Christy had said the first time she watched Twin Peaks is she was like, I feel like watching the intro with the dreamy music and the slow machinery and mountains and it's all foggy, kind of elicits a dreamlike feeling. And Twin Peaks kind of is a dreamlike place, right? Like it's kind of weird and bizarre and off a little bit, but at the same time it's on. I don't know. Like I think that that's one thing that they did do a really good job with in capturing little aspects that seem familiar, but also odd.
As for the dream likeness of this show, absolutely. And the sequence that we get in the finale of season 2 with Cooper in the red room, I think personally is one of the best conveyances of a dream in any kind of TV show or film, personally, because I think there's a lot of different ways that we use visual language to communicate that somebody is dreaming or that something is dreamlike. And very few of those, like the fisheye lens and such, are really not what I think I've experienced in my dreams. But the way that Cooper is running from room to room and it keeps changing and he can't find what he wants and he's
Mm-hmm.
being chased, those are all, it feels like those are dreams I've had dozens and dozens of times. So I thought that part captured dreams much better than really anything I've ever seen.
So the last episode, Lynch comes back for, right? Like the very final episode.
Yeah, you
and
feel it.
And he rewrites the episode apparently, like whenever he comes back on. So we have, I assume, pretty much the whole Red Room ending is what he rewrites into the show.
Got it.
But what I will say is some of the things that he sets up in that sequence, it the change in feel from the episode before to it is palpable, right? Like there's a complete, almost atmospheric change to the show when Lynch takes back over, and it's effective. Like rewatching that last sequence and like Laura Palmer screaming in reverse and stuff like that, like it was effective in giving me the heebie-jeebies, right?
Yeah, whatever contact lenses they used on the doppelganger versions of people was very scary.
Oh yeah, especially when we see Cooper with the eyes. Man, like anytime that you see your hero or someone that you're conditioned to believe is good, when they've got those eyes, that freaks me out. It really came to mind of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire at the end when Cedric Diggory's like got the eyes. Maybe that's just me.
I'm not a Harry Potter person. I'm sorry.
Oh, I gotta say, like, I don't know if I've ever seen a show or like, I don't know how they do it. Like, how do they do the like? This show is so good at fading images into each other. Like every time, like the giant dude shows up and it's like the lights dim, but they don't. It's like it doesn't go all the way black, but then it's like him as a giant. And the same thing when he goes away, and then like that scene in between the sycamore trees where like the curtain shows up
Mm-hmm.
with the trees and they go in, like it's like my eyes can't tell like that's
Where
fake,
one
like,
begins and the other
effect.
ends.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is like the best special effect of the whole show. And I was like, the show did those kinds of things so well, and I don't even know if I've seen like a movie or show like do something like that's like such high quality.
It's using more, what I would say, almost antique effects, like a classic fade in between stuff, but in a way that would not normally be used, right? But yeah, I liked it too. I find a lot of the little things that they choose to do, even though it was with ABC and had like probably some budget behind it, they chose to go with these weird odd effects,
Mhm.
right? But I think that adds again to the endearing nature of Twin Peaks.
Because it's got this kind of soap opera, maybe even daytime, a little bit. I don't know if I want to use the word cheap feeling, but it doesn't really feel so much like a primetime drama.
Mm-hmm.
Now
I was.
I'm sorry.
Oh, nothing. I was gonna say I was talking to Jay off pod, and I was like, I'm really excited for the whatever it's called, revival, renewal, or
The
third season,
return.
the return. Just for the jump in quality. I'm like, this. I'm assuming 480p stuff is like burning my eyes out. Like I love the show, but I'm like, I would love to be able to see some clear edges in the updated 2017 version of this.
It's also pretty great. Like if you lined it up, the 2017 version comes out exactly 25 years after Twin Peaks, and you remember the end of the episode, Laura whispers to Dale, "I'll see you in 25 years."
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
is that
think
I? Go ahead.
I just think that that's really awesome that he was able to line it up that way, right?
Yeah, it's smart in multiple ways because I guess it meant that she's going to see him in a dream he's already had where he's an old man.
Mm-hmm.
Guessing that's him 25 years later, aged when we first go to the Red Room. I was like, oh, that's a pretty, like, well thought out, like, makes me believe there's actually like a roadmap for this thing. Like, is there an answer, like a wiki somewhere where like the showrunners have said, this is what all this means? Because I am not smart enough to figure this show out.
Yes,
Like, all the symbolism.
yes, and there is some supplemental um, literature, if you will, from Mark Frost and David Lynch. I think there's like investigation dossiers and things like that have been put together. Some really interesting stuff that you can read about. But there were whole like websites dedicated to the mystery of Twin Peaks and what happened at the end and what's all going on and the doppelgangers and Bob and these entities. I think this kind of leads us kind of sticking with the surrealist stuff. Two questions that I have to ask you guys. What is your understanding of the Red Room, Black Lodge, White Lodge? First one.
uh, my understanding is very little. Um, I
Interpretation of I mean like as we kind of saw like we had was it Hawk lay out some local folklore, right? That
Mhm.
there's this Black Lodge and this White Lodge, and that these entities or beings kind of interfere or connect to our world. And that's really not outside of that. We're just kind of shown glimpses of things, right? And we're not really defined as to what is what. And
Mhm.
so, is the Red Room the Black Lodge? Is it the White Lodge? Is it the in between? Like, what do you guys think?
Okay. Well, I've purposefully tried to avoid reading anything about Twin Peaks to spoil anything,
There.
but my interpretation was Black Lodge and White Lodge, and in broad strokes, we're talking about heaven and hell,
Okay.
and the Red Room because of something that the little person says. He mentions it being a waiting room. Uh, my understanding, at least my feeling, was that the Red Room was exactly that, maybe a limbo or
Purgatory.
an anteroom, a purgatory, before proceeding to the actual Black Lodge. I read something online today that seemed to be indicating that the Red Room and the Black Lodge were synonymous. You know, that's not for me to say. But what about you, Tony?
Uh, yeah, I don't. I went to the same like thought of heaven and hell, and then like, well, it really falls apart except for some characters. But I was like, maybe Twin Peaks, like Twin Peaks is limbo or something. It doesn't work for every character, but it's like, okay, Cooper was like stabbed in before he came to Twin Peaks, and like maybe he has unfinished business or something to try to solve the case for Caroline, or like he didn't feel like he was done. And then like Annie at the end, she had her wrist slit, and I mean Laura obviously died already in there, but it sounds like she escaped. So I'm like, I wonder if just like Twin Peaks is purgatory or limbo, and all these people have died but have unfinished business. And then like you're saying, like White Lodge is heaven, Black Lodge is hell. But it just doesn't work for every character. There's a lot of characters that don't have any visual signs of like being dead or anything, or have anything in their past. So I really don't know. I'm either going to sound smart or really stupid once I actually figure out what this is supposed to be.
I don't know that we can say that everything is answered clearly. I think that if we're looking at kind of like a surrealist version of heaven and hell, I think that that's a fair way of describing it. And I think I agree with Jay that, especially based off the arms description, that the Red Room is some type of purgatory or waiting, or kind of like a landing like pad for these beings, because it seems that like Bob and the doppelgangers are there, right? But also Leland seemed to be there.
Right. So I wanted to talk about Bob as well.
Okay, so yeah, Bob is like an actual like malicious spirit, right?
Uh-huh.
He's not like the doppelgangers. They're like, in my understanding, the doppelgangers are kind of like lower than Bob. And we also have Mike and the arm. Like these are the spirits that we're made aware of, at least. What do you guys think? Like, I want you guys to kind of lead the conversation here, and I'll jump in with my thoughts.
Well, as for Bob, the armchair analysis that I came up with was that Bob is a representation of the evils that men perpetrate on others, and especially women.
Okay.
That Bob, having inhabited Leland, who then murdered his own daughter and his niece, I think maybe it's 2022 talking, but that felt like it was communicating that Leland had abused his daughter and maybe some of his extended family as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think since Laura was a kid, right? She's been molested and stuff by
according to the
Bob
journal
through her dad. Yeah, in the journal.
And especially in 1990, we're very concerned about drugs and how it's affecting our communities. This is very much the just say no, and one little puff of marijuana is going to send you down the road to cocaine and partying with truckers and French Canadian blackjack dealers and death ultimately.
Yeah.
So that's I felt like that's what the symbolism of what Bob could be.
So, like, if we're looking at it as a metaphor, Bob represents the evil in men that pushes them to destroy beauty, to murder someone, to take life. But then we have the surrealist interpretation of everything that's going on, that there's this evil spirit that feeds off of fear and sends dying Asian women into doorknobs on little nightstands from the fear, and cause their bodies to drop to 60 pounds or whatever. So like, I mean, this is all part of the story. I'm not even embellishing anything.
You're not.
And so, like, what the fuck, right? Like, there's a little bit of a what is going on, because Bob it doesn't seem that Bob is in fact a metaphor. It in fact seems that Bob is a malicious spirit from the Black Lodge. That Twin Peaks seems to be, and I think to Tony's point, I don't think Twin Peaks is purgatory, but I think that Twin Peaks exists in a place where the barrier between the world of these spirits and our world is not so strong, perhaps. And so when according to the drawing in the cave, there's times and places where it even is weaker and things can travel in between. And that's why Dale and Wyndham Earl and everybody's able to enter into the Red Room physically, as opposed to just dreaming about being in the Red Room, as Dale does in season 1. So, like, with regards to that, it seems that Bob is in fact a active agent in our world, right? Now,
Right.
the question is Leland innocent? Or is Leland complicit? Did Leland have any agency with regards to what Bob was doing? Or do you believe him when he said he didn't know? Or does his odd behavior throughout season 1 and the beginning of season 2 kind of betray that idea?
Well, I don't know if I'm misremembering, but I think Bob even said that Leland didn't really actually know, but as soon as he left, he would remember. And that's kind of what happens once he confesses and stuff. He's like, "Oh my God, It's like he knew, but he didn't know until Bob left. Is what kind of I got from it.
I know that Bob says that, but Bob is not controlling Leland when Leland is doing crazy shit. When he's singing Little Lambs Eat Ivy and things like that. Like, I think that there is some subconscious guilt being manifested throughout that whole sequence. I mean, am I crazy? I mean, do y'all not think that they're not looking back at it through the lens that he's the murderer? Does that not seem like someone who's
Maybe he was been driven crazy by Bob. I don't know.
It's very
I
true.
guess that's a I guess optimistic way of looking at it.
Like, maybe he
took
was not unconsciously in control of it, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't subconsciously aware of it.
See, I took it a little differently.
Okay.
I interpreted it as season 1 Leland was unaware of the violence that was perpetrated through him by Bob, and then when he murdered Jacques Renault in the hospital, that amplified Bob's control over him. And I took the crazy, the white hair and the Marensy dotes and dozy dotes. I took that as, I thought that was Bob was in
Embodying.
more if not complete control of Leland at
Okay.
that point. And we didn't really get back to Leland himself until he was lying on the concrete in that holding cell with the sprinklers on him and the blood coming down. That's the way that I took it.
He was a kid, right?
He said so.
Yeah,
but
he
Bob
met him
also.
when.
Well, Bob's not a person, though, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, Leland remembers. He's like, I met him. He used to live at the cabin when I was a kid, and then obviously he's been molesting his daughter for like years and years, and I mean, the part about him killing Jacques Renault, like he already murdered. What's her
He
name?
also
Something Palmer, like somewhere else.
Laura
Like,
Palmer.
oh yeah, Laura Palmer. But there's like another girl that he also murdered, like in a different town, right? That led to the connection when Cooper came.
We are told that yes, there was a fingernail. So we don't know. We haven't been told that part of the story, other than there was a fingernail. So you're right. Harkening back to episode 1, the whole reason why Dale's there is that there was a murder that matched this murder before this.
Yeah. So I mean, if what we think is true, like Leland's been killing people. Like,
this is not his first kill.
Yeah, it's not like him killing Jacques was his first murder. Maybe it was his first Leland murder. I guess that could be something. But the psychiatrist dude, Dr. Jacoby, smelled the castor oil, which is like the sign of Bob, like or like the barrier between the Red Room the world. So like I feel like that was Bob too doing the killing of Jacques Renault.
Yeah, I agree too. I don't think it was Leland. I think it was Bob, because of the smell, the castor oil, and I think that Tony's absolutely correct, and that's what I'm saying. But this is my thing: is that there are moments where Leland is in control and he is grieving, right? But there are also moments where he is acting absolutely bizarre. And those moments where he's acting bizarre is not, to me, is not just explained by the grief. There's something more to it. And I feel like part of that is guilt. And that's maybe I'm reading a little bit more into it, but I feel like some of the, and I think the performance that the actor that plays Leland does is phenomenal. Like one of the best in the show. But I just feel like there's something more to that I don't know how much I believe Leland when he says he didn't know,
Maybe
because
I'll be nicer. And if he's guilty of not being as strong as Laura to like either kill himself or let himself die
for
to
sure.
get rid of Bob. So maybe that's like what he's guilty of. If he did have some sort of like
Awareness.
moments of clarity where he realized that it wasn't really his fault, but through him these things were being done, maybe he should have taken some measures in his own hands or something.
Well, and I guess it comes down to how much he knew about his early killings or his other killings. Because it also seems like Bob kind of started escalating things, right, towards the end with Leland, killing Laura Palmer 2.0, Maddie.
Man, that scene of Bob through Leland murdering Maddie was tough to watch.
Yeah, it was long
Both-
too.
It was long, it was quite violent and graphic, but also like unintentionally funny.
Got a little slapsticky.
Got a little slapsticky, yeah.
I think it gets back to like how number one, murder is probably not how people expect it to be, right? It's a struggle to strangle someone to death.
Yeah.
Um.
Oh, so all of a sudden this show's realistic?
No, I'm just saying that in a certain way, like watching someone get strangled, they're gonna fight back,
No,
right? And you can't control that, and it kind of throws a little chaos, which can create comedy. Which in my opinion, that is a realistic aspect of it. But whenever they murdered Laura, we don't know, just as an easy task or not. But I want to pivot.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The part about Bob, like if he's an entity causing these things, like the weirdest part is like he seems like pure, just like animalistic, like either rage or destruction and stuff. But it's like all these acts, like they're still not good evidence of like the crime. And like even like the second one, Maddie, like he has the wherewithal to like put that little, I don't remember that little minx thing. Like why was that in her hands? Like either he got that and put it in her hand, or she had it in his house and he had the wherewithal to like frame Ben Horn for it. Like I just like it's too different. Like Bob is so like ragey and like murdery without, I feel like there's no intelligence there really. But then like the way these crimes take so long to solve and there's no evidence where they frame other people, it just seems like weird. Both things could be true.
Leland could be involved there, no understanding that he could be caught for this. So, but okay, so let's bring in Mike. Mike in the arm, a big part of the story is they find Bob through using Mike, which apparently is another inhabiting spirit from the Black Lodge or White Lodge. We're not really sure, just from the same area, right? And they used to I guess they used to murder together, so I guess Black Lodge.
Right. Former partners.
And then he decided to stop, right? And he cut off his arm, and that became the arm in the Red Room, which is the little person that's dancing on the in the lobby. Which again, if you guys have any interpretations of that one is That one's beyond me. I just think that one's
Whoa. Holy shit.
bizarre.
I missed that entirely, the connection between the arm and the dancing
Me
man.
too. Like I was like, what? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
But then I
the
was
guy.
just thinking of the statue without the arm too.
No, the guy who was dancing is the arm of Mike,
Oh.
who had the tattoo that matched Bob's tattoo, and he cut off his arm. Because like whenever Dale goes in there, he says, "I'm the arm."
I missed that line, I guess.
I like Twin Peaks. I'd love to understand it someday.
It's
I
got
wanna
lots
give-
of layers, right?
Yeah.
The
Can I
owls
give,
are
like,
not.
a
The owls are not what they seem.
concentrated Emmy to Bob for having like almost no screen time and no lines, but like scary AF, bro. Like that dude literally, like every time he's on the screen, scares the bejesus out of me.
Do you think it just like on the piece of paper, David Lynch wrote snarl?
Like his crazy face and eyes, like, wow, dude, I give that guy applause. I'll give him a retroactive Emmy.
Like it definitely felt exploitative, the very last scene of this season where it's revealed that Bob is now inhabiting Cooper, and the last thing we hear Cooper saying is mockingly, "Where's Annie? Where's Annie?" That was some scary stuff.
Yeah. Can you imagine that being like the last thing for 25 years?
That'd
No,
be tough.
yeah, that broke my heart. I was like, no. Like I wanted him to be like having a mental like inner in his mind battle with the doppelganger, like moving forward, but I didn't want him to be like Bob. Like I thought it was gonna be like him wrestling with doppelganger like internally, not taken over by Bob. I was like, oh no, my boy, my boy.
I think what's really interesting is that like very shortly after the season finale, we get the movie, and what I think people don't realize or did not realize is that it's a prequel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's before everything that happened here in Twin Peaks. So they don't even get an answer to the ending here, like straight up for 25 years. So
Well,
but sorry,
go.
I just
Well, if
I
you-
want
Mhm.
to pivot to Gordon Cole real fast.
Gordon
because
Cole.
Gordon Cole was absolutely my favorite character in Twin Peaks. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on Gordon Cole and his performance.
The not hearing bit, I think, is a great example of this show being able to create tension, then deflate it pretty well with some moments of levity.
Giving himself, I feel like one of the more ridiculous roles was really, really interesting. And the always shouting,
Yes.
like it came off as number one, the fact that like, you know, the sequence where Harry's outside the hallway and he's like, I need to talk to Coop, and he's shouting, he just like he's like, we can hear everything you're saying in the hall. You know, like it's almost like they're a little bit patronizing to David Lynch or to Gordon Cole, but you know, I don't know. I just loved every single sequence that he was in. Like the sequence with Shelley making Bobby jealous and all that. Like that was clearly written just so that he could kiss a pretty young girl. But
yeah, at least she's out of high school. But yeah, I really like that whole scene with him. Where he's like, "Oh my god, I can hear you."
when Tommy doesn't shout.
I'm glad you bring up Gordon Cole and Shelley because that brings me to I think the main, maybe not the main, but a big negative about this show and something that I think dates it very much, and that's how often we see full-grown adults having relationships with or lusting after teenagers.
Yeah.
It's constant in this show.
Yeah, we have the Nadine Mike connection.
I've compiled a list.
Oh, please lay it on us.
We've got Judge Sternwood with his assistant, if you remember the circuit judge.
Okay, yep.
We've got James and Evelyn Marsh, which we could do a whole bonus content episode on how much I hate James.
Yeah, I think that's a universal feeling.
Yeah. We've got Josie and Andrew Packard.
Yep.
We've got Audrey and Cooper.
Yep.
We've got Shelley and Gordon Cole.
Yep.
We got Shelley and Leo. I guess Leo, we're never really given how old he is, but given that he's a working trucker when she's dropped out of high school to marry him, gonna count it.
Yeah, I go for it.
We've got that doesn't even count Laura. We've got Laura,
Ben Horn and Laura,
who we know has had at least sexual relations with Leo Jacquarino and Ben Horn. We've got Dr. Jacoby, who's definitely got the hots for her.
Yep.
Now, one that I questioned whether I should include in the list was Annie and Cooper, because both Cooper and Annie, it's a little ambiguous about how exactly old they are. But I think a proxy to use for this that's often used is the ages of the actors. And Heather Graham, who plays Annie, was born in 1970, the same year as both, I think, Lara Flynn Boyle, who plays Donna, as well as the actress who plays Laura Palmer, whose name escapes me. So 1970 is their birth year. So they're about 1920 when the show is being made.
Okay.
Kyle MacLachlan was born in 1959. He's 11 years older. So I think I'm going to count Annie and Cooper because Heather Graham was only 20 at the time of the show. But that sent me down a rabbit hole where apparently the plan all along was after the Laura Palmer storyline was resolved, the main storyline was going to be Audrey getting together with Cooper.
Yep.
But
the Donna connection, right?
Yes, Lara Flynn Boyle at the time in real life was dating Kyle
Cooper.
MacLachlan. Yes. And so Lara Flynn Boyle objects, and I think I read that we've got multiple good sources like Sherilyn Fenn, David Lynch, and others confirming that was the plan, but then they started to get pushback from Lara Flynn Boyle and Kyle MacLachlan, so they dropped it. Now, I'm glad they dropped it, and we'll get back to that in a second. But that storyline is dropped partially because Lara Flynn Boyle was trying to argue that it was creepy for Cooper to be with a girl so young. Meanwhile, Sherilyn Fenn was born about 5 years before these other actresses. So Lara Flynn Boyle is actually, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. Sherilyn Fenn, Audrey, is actually a few years older than the other actresses.
Just playing a younger actress.
And she does it so well. But you look at Lara Flynn Boyle's Wikipedia page, well, who was she with after Kyle MacLachlan? She gets with Jack Nicholson.
She's just into old dudes.
He was born in the 40s. She was 29. He was 62 when they got together.
I knew about this with Donna because when The Return was being made, there was a lot of chatter that Donna didn't make it into The Return, and it was payback for her fucking with the story all those years back when.
Interesting.
You know what blew my mind? Like, when Nadine shouts out, "I'm 35 years old," is that how old her and Ed are supposed to be? Like, Ed's got to be approaching 40, and Nadine, I don't want to speak to.
They all went to school together. Like, remember?
Yeah, I'm like.
So 35? He has to be 35.
35?
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that they were not in the same grade year, because we're also told that Norma was Miss Twin Peaks 20 years prior. So did she win Miss Twin Peaks at 15?
Time is not really static here. So maybe.
I mean, they could be maybe Ed and Norma were seniors and Nadine was freshman or
Freshman.
sophomore or something. Yeah, maybe
That's
they're
what I'm hoping
39
for.
and she's 35.
Well, the whole Nadine story is ridiculous.
That storyline won me over. Like, at first, I was very resistant to this very dumb, very sitcom-y storyline. But I think by the time that we get to Nadine and Mike, like, in disguises, checking
Checking
in at
into
the
the
Great
hotel.
Northern, amazing.
What about whenever Mike whispers to Bobby why he's dating Nadine?
Man, quote of the series for me so far is, do you have any idea what the combination of sexual maturity and superhuman strength can do?
It was good.
Mostly because, kind of going back to what we were talking about with the underage lust, the phrase sexual maturity in there is kind of weird. You know, I think maybe what Mike meant was sexual experience, because I think what he's saying is this lady knows what she's doing. But the phrase sexual maturity, to at least to me, communicates more like, oh, this girl's finished puberty, which by 35, I hope so.
Yeah, well, I definitely, again, with Lynch, the 50s are always kind of like one of the thematic elements that I feel like he uses. Like, even with like Mike wearing his Letterman jacket all the time, right?
Yeah.
It harkens back to the 1950s kind of aesthetic. I feel like maybe even some of the dialogue, some of the choices, what are said, are intentionally dated, even for the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Again, to add to that facade that you're looking at, but at the same time, like, I remember there was a get together with some friends where we were talking about like music in the 1960s and 70s and how many songs there are about like young girls, right? That today would not be made because it's not appropriate. But there's also this kind of point in time where the law changes and becomes more definite as to what is and isn't appropriate in our country. And there's some, that time period that kind of straddles that is in the like 50s and 60s. That is why you see kind of this overlap with these pop culture songs. Well, like, because of that, is that something that Twin Peaks is kind of like pointing out with all these weird age gap relations, even with like Billy Zane? Like, how long has it been? 2 weeks since Laura's death, and she's a classmate of Audrey, but Audrey's now an adult at the end of it, like willing to get on the plane and have sex with Billy Zane. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I find really, really like weird. And is it just, David Lynch being a weird old horny dude, or is he like kind of making a commentary about how like our culture sexualizes everything? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I did not give him that credit. I 100% was all on board on he's a horny old dude. He engineered a situation where he could kiss Shelley. And I'm glad you bring up Billy Zane, because as you guys might have noticed, the show's social media posted some memes in support of Audrey's relationship with John Justice Wheeler. And I would like, if we're, again, this is another situation where we know that Audrey's supposed to be 18 and John Justice Wheeler's age is a little bit indeterminate. But again, he's able to, I think, fly his own plane.
Yeah.
And is a business mogul. But if we use the ages of the actors as an analog again, as a proxy, Sherilyn Fenn is actually a year older than Billy Zane.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So that's how I'm gonna rationalize my support for their relationship.
They're fine. You're fine with the depiction because she's technically older.
By proxy.
By proxy.
Yes.
But fair enough.
I think the scene where they're getting on the plane and she says, "I'm a virgin, do me fast before you leave." That's, I think, one of maybe the textbook examples of a scene written by a man who'd never talked to a woman. Like, man.
I just love that Pete's there waiting.
Fucking Pete!
He knew she needed right back.
Grand Theft Auto. 12
So I'm
rainbow
up late,
trout
I
in
guess.
bed.
Was the show canceled or did?
Yeah.
So if you will indulge me, I did some research today and got some production notes that I
Okay.
think could tell the story a little bit. So this show, when it premiered, like we talked about last time, it was a huge sensation. The pilot episode was watched by 34 million people. So that's a huge number, but there's your benchmark for viewership. Season 2 begins. We're still at 19 million people, still a very good audience, but it starts dropping off as season 2 goes on, and as we all saw, it got a little sillier. Quality was a little different, to the point that by episode 15 of the season, uh, this is where James is with the Marshes, being framed for the murder. We're getting into the Wyndham Earl storyline. Viewership had dropped to 8 million people, and of the 89 programs that were rated that evening, Twin Peaks was something like 86th place. It was one of the worst rated shows that day. That was February 9th, 1991. 1 week later, we get one more episode. Viewership is even lower, and that's February 16th, 1991. Well, what happens on February 17th, 1991? Coalition U.S. forces make their way into Iraq as part of Operation Desert Storm, and everyone's attention goes to CNN because that was the first war that was broadcast live.
Yeah.
So Twin Peaks goes on hiatus. It's not seen for another about a month and a half. They come back on a different night, which is never a good sign for a television show.
Oop.
And it runs for, let's see, it comes back March 28th, 1991. It runs for 4 more weeks. And we've got 2 episodes left at that point. It goes on another hiatus, ending in mid-April, comes back mid-June, when they air the last 2 episodes back to back. And from what I read, the ending was intentional audience bait to try and get that audience back up to get that 3rd season, but the network and the studio said no, and we're left with what we got. So I was not aware of that Gulf War connection until today, and it a little bit makes sense, the big gap in the production schedule now.
Mm-hmm. So I definitely think it's one of those things that I can see why Lynch left. Like, even with the whole Donna pushing on the story, right? Like, you can't have that kind of pressure, I guess, whenever you're making a story, if you want to tell your story. But I think that's why whenever the return is getting negotiated, he likes that I get to do it the way I want, 1 season, this many episodes, and that's it. And the studio was like, we're down to do that, but what about doing it in 2 seasons? And he's like, I'm done. I'm out. And they're like, no. Whatever you want. We will not touch it at all. And they didn't. They just let him do it. Like, I think that he had been burnt by everybody interfering with Twin Peaks. Some of it comes out okay, but obviously some of it has a rough time. So, but overall, I really enjoyed it. I had a fun time through the story again.
That's something that I'm looking forward to from the return, is maybe a little bit more unfettered Lynch, for good or bad, whatever that's going to be. I'm excited to see what that means.
I want to reiterate that my memory is that this is like watching like a 20-hour movie broken up by the episode length. But I also remember watching it and being just like blown away. So it's been 2018 since I watched it. So I'm super excited to get to it.
Now, I do want to talk about some expectations or predictions for the next season, but before we do that, Last thing that I'd want to discuss with you guys is Audrey and Audrey's character.
Okay. Yeah.
Because in session one, I got Audrey all wrong. I think I brought some of my own personal projecting and baggage onto her character. And Audrey, I know you're listening, and I'm sorry, but Audrey in season two is magnificent and one of the best characters on this show, I think.
Okay.
The arc that she has, starting with her her incarceration, her captivity at One-Eyed Jack's, where she's in over her head. She does have to get rescued, and I kind of wish that she had been able to find her way out rather than getting rescued, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean,
but
she was drugged. Like, there's
Right.
some points you don't have a lot of control over.
But afterwards, she empowers herself. She recognizes that her father's empire is going to need a successor, and she starts going through the steps to genuinely make that work for herself. There seems to be a very much growing up of the character of Audrey Horne in season two, and she was one of my favorites in watching all of this.
Well, then, what are your thoughts about the very end?
So, if realism has any place in this show, which it does not, she's dead. There's no way. There's no way that she survives a blast where she's chained to the vault at the aperture of it. Like, all the force that explosion is going out. So she's been blown up into tiny little pieces. But this is Twin Peaks. So
you think she makes it?
No. Well, you know. I might have seen some cast photos from The Return, so
so you know she makes it.
So I know she makes it.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way she or Pete survives. Like, it blew out the windows on the first floor, and they were in the basement. Like, yeah, there's no way.
The actor who played Pete, trying to think, what is his name? And he also played was it Eraserhead, which was an earlier film by David Lynch, but he died in a bar fight.
Jack Nance is his name. He died in a bar fight?
I'm pretty sure, if memory serves me, yeah, it's like a weird freak death. Yeah, on December 29, 1996, Nance lunch with some friends. He had a visible crescent bruise under his eye. He said that he had gotten into a brawl outside of a donut store that morning. He described the incident, I guess I got what I deserve, and then he went home complaining of a headache, and he had a subdural hematoma. So,
okay, I know I said that Audrey is my last topic, but I did want to talk about Tojimura and
Catherine dressed up like an Asian man.
I mean, I know that this show came out in 1990, and HD was not a thing. People were watching this show on 18-inch dump tube TVs, but we've got one character who's missing, but whose body has not been found, Catherine, after the mill fire. And then mysteriously, this very obviously costumed, disguised Japanese businessman comes into town. Oh man, I wonder who that might be. Like, come on. Like,
well, even Pete starts hitting on him, Yes. I count that part of the sitcom-y flavor.
But that was after the fact, right?
That was after the mill burned down.
I thought earlier in the day, like, Catherine had revealed herself to Pete, and then that's why Pete was hitting on him.
The first time that Pete sees the Nakamura or whatever is at the bar, and he's like really trying to offer a drink to him.
Yes.
And he doesn't know that it's Catherine yet.
Mm-hmm. Because that reveal, when Catherine reveals herself to Pete, I think I told you Lindsay bailed on this show long ago, but I was like, Lindsay, you got to see this. Well, shall we talk some expectations or predictions for the movie or for The Return?
I think we should do. Here's my. Yes, I think we should do the movie first.
Okay.
And I do think we should go ahead and do The Return because the movie is a prequel.
Mhm.
So I think from here we kind of need to go both directions.
For the movie, I don't really know what to expect apart from I'd like to know more about Cooper's investigation immediately beforehand. I think very early on we got reference to that he was investigating a different murder with a letter under the fingernail. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Okay. Tony?
What do I think about the movie?
Like, what are your expectations for the movie?
Oh, well, I was on Wikipedia trying to figure out what happened in season 2, and then I read not too far about the movie, but I guess I read the synopsis of the movie, so I think I know.
You know where we're going with that. Okay, well then,
yeah.
what are your expectations for season 3? What do you want to see? What are you expecting to see? Jay, same question after Tony answers.
I guess the aftermath of the doppelganger, I guess, is what I want to see. Like, are they going to go back? I mean, I guess that'd be too spoilery, but like, are they where they'll pick up if the movie's a prequel and like the end of season 2 was such a cliffhanger? I'm wondering where, like, are we just going to show up 25 years later and basically, I wouldn't be surprised with this show if they just never addressed anything and they just start from that point in time and move on and we figure stuff out later on, or like I wouldn't be surprised if there are no flashbacks, but I would like some maybe flashbacks. I don't know how they would de-age people though since it's been 25 years. So I don't know. I don't have very many expectations except for I look forward to my eyeballs relaxing a little bit, seeing some nice things. Maybe I don't know if
it is HD. It's Showtime.
Yeah.
I don't know about the movie. I haven't looked at that in a while. So, Jay, your thoughts, feelings, expectations?
I think I still don't want Audrey and Cooper to get together.
Okay.
I want Ed and Norma to get a happy ending.
Oh, okay.
I want a payoff with the whole Cooper versus Bob versus everybody thing, but I'm not gonna hold my breath too much on that. I have a lot of difficulty imagining just what are they going to do 25 years later. Who's still going to be there? Who's going to be coming back? And I've tried to avoid, another area where I've tried to avoid spoilers as much as possible, but I think any time that I've tried to predict where the show was going, it completely subverted my expectations, and I'm excited for more of that.
Excellent. I'm not going to list any expectations because I've already seen it, but
sure.
I obviously I'm super excited. This has been the foundational work for what I would consider one of my favorite pieces of art in television, and that is The Return. I know that the movie is very good. It is a little bit more of the energy of like the Lynchian episodes, just throughout the whole thing. But I'm excited to watch that again. But I can't wait to sink my teeth into The Return. Like that is what I have been. I've just been waiting for you guys to get to this point because we blazed through season 2. Me and Christy, we couldn't stop watching. So I think a lot of this stuff is going to be addressed that you guys brought up. I'm really excited to see what you guys think about it. But there's also some really interesting people who show up, like who does make it back, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will say that you do get to see Bobby and James, so your favorites.
Nice. As a bonus, I'm gonna watch Dual Spires, the episode of Psych.
Oh yeah, you should. You definitely should. Also,
it's like a pre-return.
The lady who sang the weird song that James and Donna were looking across the table at each other during. She just recently passed away. Just like in the last couple of weeks. I saw that in the newspaper.
Headlines.
Also, I don't actually look at newspapers. I just terminology.
Well, I'm very excited to watch the movie, to watch The Return. We'll be back shortly with our thoughts on the movie after having watched that. But for now, I will see you in the trees.
Excellent.
All right, I have stopped my Audacity recording. And
I'm exporting mine.
Let me stop the Skype recording.
Yeah. I gotta go. I'm in